The first class in the series of building your brand. What we're going to be talking about is uncovering the ultimate you because you are the person behind the brand. It's really important to uncover all that we can uncover from your strengths, your values, and then coming up with a winning strategy. So you are your greatest asset. And what I've discovered is that most people don't focus on this part. They try to focus on the market and then they have a really difficult time getting clarity and making decisions. So we're going to start with you and then we're going to move to your audience and then your strategy. So that's what we're going to cover today. Everyone is unique, and because of that, everybody's strategy is going to be different. So one of the things that I've found in my journey is that we often look to other people and emulate them, and that is amazing and great, but you have to remember that you are not them and they are not you, and what worked for them might not work for you. Developing an inside out strategy is really important to creating a business that not only is profitable but also sustains you. The big picture intention of this is really to make your marketing a lot more effective. The main misconception that most people have is that the brand comes after the marketing when I'm big and successful and can spend all this money on ads and billboards, but that's not a brand. We want to make marketing a lot easier and more effective. And so branding and getting clarity on your brand does that. We're going to start going over the steps in really deep detail, and we'll have a Q&A at the end so you can ask me whatever questions that you would like, and you can tell me a little bit more about your business. So my big why is that I am a very passionate entrepreneur, and I'm really on a mission to help every entrepreneur succeed. I think it's just the foundation of our country and the backbone of the economy. It's a lot, though, to do everything. And after all my experience in corporate America, I was completely lost and confused when it came to marketing my business. And I studied strategy, I studied marketing in business school. And when it came to myself, I was just like running around in circles. And because of that experience, I really created a framework for myself. I also explored a lot of things. I am a research nerd and a learning nerd. So I explored everything and kind of saw what worked and what doesn't. And that's what I share with people. What we'll cover today is starting with the internal landscape. So when we start with internally who we are and what drives us and our strategy, we see the external from a different lens and we're able to be a lot more clarity when it comes to the decisions have to make. And so I'm going to be going through all of that today and how to connect the dots and action items for next week when we take the deep dive into our messaging. So, the recap from the webinar, in case you didn't see it, I talked about what branding is. And it's very much of a everything, not a one thing. It's who you are, it's your values, it's all these different touch points. But at the end of the day, we know that the ultimate brand is really a feeling or emotion that we attach ourselves to. And so the big brands do this really well, like the Nike, just do it. It's motivation. And we talked about how people make decisions really based on emotions, and we don't really know what drives them. And so in our research, we can really see things through a deeper lens. And so just you being here and listening to this, I think your lens and your day to day and your interactions and the conversations that you have with people, you're going to stop and start asking these different questions and start really thinking, why is this important to this person? Get curious and dig deeper to the deeper why. And that is really the key to good marketing. And they're going to tell you what they need, and they're going to say it in their words. And so it really takes that inquisitive and curious mind, and that's a lot of marketing or communications. So you are your greatest asset. There's nobody like you, and that is really your superpower. And so I'm going to go through all these different ways to really come up with setting the foundation based on what creates meaning in your life. How do you leverage your strengths? People in their strength zones are 10 times more productive and effective. When we get confused and lose our way in our business, it's because we're just so excited and we want to market and we want to get ourselves out there. We overload ourselves with lots of information and we forget to build the core and the foundation of our business on a very solid groundwork, because we're going to need that perseverance. It's a journey, and it's the perseverance is really key. And that's, I'm going to help you find what those key elements of perseverance are for you. So knowing this is your guidepost. And that's why I encourage you guys to bring a journal or start writing this stuff down, because we do lose our way. And so writing down all of these important tenets of values and what's meaningful to you will bring you back to center. There's not a direct path. We go like this. And so coming back to that path is, and recentering is really about reminding yourself of who you are and what's important to you. So brand values. So we're going to start with values, because as we have seen, people with shared values, that's who we connect with. And we get so overwhelmed with all of marketing, when at the end of the day, it's about this connection of shared values that makes people want to purchase your product. So I'm going to give you this example of the LOHAS industry. So the LOHAS industry is an industry that is a $500 billion industry. And so you can see here that there's two different brands here. So Haagen-Dazs and Ben and Jerry's, and they have the exact same product. They have their ice cream with good ingredients of just milk and sugar and cream, but they have a completely different brand based on their values. And so Haagen-Dazs is luxury, quality, and that, okay, I did something great today, I'm gonna treat myself to Haagen-Dazs ice cream, right? Or it's Ben and Jerry's, which is much more of a like a jester archetype. They're political. They are very driven by causes and doing no harm, and that is that's an example of how it makes you different. The other is this a lot of values driven companies are causes. There's Starbucks, who's marketing to the masses, and their values are in the business of serving and giving you a great experience, from their exterior, their the whole ambiance, to the people. Or you have a business that is a cause. So basically, this coffee shop is about love and acceptance, really, because they hire people that have disabilities to run their coffee shop. And so this is how most people think, oh, I sell a product, it's not really a service. How can I create a brand or up-level my brand? That's based on values. And so they're really not selling coffee. They're really selling a concept of love and acceptance. And values are interpreted differently for everybody. And just because a main value of mine is integrity or truth, there's a different meaning in terms of what it means to you, why you think it's important, and how you make it come to life in your business. So that's why it's not duplicatable. Just how you interpret it is different for everyone. And then from Steve Jobs, this video. So you can listen more to the video later. And I sent it out in one of my emails, so you probably saw that. But people are really buying not just you, but what you stand for. And so that's why this whole industry has boomed. And I'm using this as an example because it's mostly product oriented, and people think, oh, I can't do that in terms of creating an emotion or feeling because I'm selling a product. I'm not really selling a service, which is me. So this is an example of how this whole surgence of this segment of the population of this LOHAS consumer, which is basically defined as the conscious consumer. LOHAS stands for Lifestyles of the Health and Sustainability. I was exposed to this industry at its infancy. It was actually my first business when I started out in 2003, 2004. It was the boom in this. And this at that point was only like $300 million segment, but it just boomed after that. There was just started so many different companies and they got all bought out by the big guys. Burt's Bees got bought out by Clorox for a couple $100 million. And Burt's Bees was really literally started by a woman who met Bert on the side of a street selling honey. And now she takes all of her money and tries to buy all the forest in acreage in Maine to help with our environment. Values of an entrepreneur are associated with a brand and what they do and how they do it. And you can see by the evidence how it's so supported by the consumer. So it's a segment of the consumer, and that segment of the consumer happens to be more middle, higher end, and they pay up to 4 times more for the products in this segment. Being low cost or people saying things are too expensive is BS because people will pay more. And that's based on the values that the company was based on and what it's trying to do in terms of impact in the world. So looking at your values and as an entrepreneur, it's really about your personal values. Values actually give you meaning in your life, and they're how we define what is meaningful. And so there's an amazing article. I think it's the best article on personal values. I have the link here, and he explains it all. He wrote a bunch of books. So it's really important to know what our personal values are. And in my life, that was my big aha. I always felt this sense of being torn or conflicted. And that was because I was really motivated by my family's values and they had good intentions. It was just they grew up in a different environment and time than me. And so when I realized that and aligned my values of my life, that was the big shift. So what you want to ask yourself is that if your values are really yours or are they somebody else's? So these are my personal and business values. I collapse the two. I think it's a lot more simple, but for me, it's about compassion, and this is how I defined it. I really am an empath, and I love to seek to understand people, curiosity, having an open mind. And this all helps me in my business and helping me stand out and also in my life. I love learning and growth, and my attitude is that every experience is a learning experience. I feel I have to check myself all the time about having a growth mindset or do I have a fixed mindset? And so the other one is truth. I'm really seeking to understand and listen and see how everybody is coming from a different situation and everybody has their own truth. And then the last one is just more about play. And really at the end of the day, you really just want to live a life that's fulfilling and joyful. And this play component, which I'm going to be talking about in the next slides, is really a key thing to uncovering our genius. So I'm going to be getting into that. So when it comes to your core values, you really want to think of what is authentic for you and your business and how can I use that as a competitive advantage, because that's inherent to you. That's like your why power, your perseverance. And so being in that value and living that value is going to create meaning for you. So, that's going to keep you going. Okay, so now we're going to get into the second part. I would love to do more of a workshop in the future soon where we can really sit down and write our values and think about it. But those are some really good prompts to get you going. The second element are your superpowers. And these are all the elements of and your genius. This quote, I love it because a lot of us just get put in situations that aren't a good fit for us. And then we think it's us, or we grow up, we're in our education or academic system, it's based on math and science and reading and all and things that are just much more linear. And there's very many shades of a genius. So the first thing is that we, as kids, we actually, what we naturally gravitate is our genius. And if they did a study at NASA where they tested 4 and 5 year olds, and 98% of them tested as creative genius level. But then when we test adults by the age of 25, less than 5%. These are some really great books that kind of validate or support that. Robert Greene is one of my favorite authors. He wrote a book called Mastery, and he says that people that gravitate towards what they love at a very early age are successful. But obviously a lot of us didn't have that opportunity to do that, but it's never too late. It's never too late to reconnect, to play really as an adult. And so that's the first and most kind of reflection, is to try to think back about when you were young and just the things that you were interested in, because it's like that's what you love, and that energy unleashes your genius. So as adults, we all need to play more and remove all the conditioning that we put in to be so serious and be so linear in what we're thinking, and expand our mind. And that is very true for reconnecting with your genius. So the second thing is about this frames of intelligence. So there's this great book by Howard Gardner. I think he's a Stanford professor, and he talks about how there's all different types of intelligence. And only two of them have to do with anything to do with math or science or reading. There's visual, there's musical, there's interpersonal, which is connecting with people. There's intra, which is with yourself. I'm an intrapersonal. That's one of my strengths. So there's many dimensions of intelligences. And when you have a combination, most people have a combination of two. And so when you combine two of these, it makes you even more awesome. If you can think about two of these in this list that are natural talents of you, and then how can you use both of them together in something that you care about, your values and the industry you're interested in. Those are areas where you can apply these strengths. The third big idea here is about two disciplines. So this is more shifting into the gears of like ideas and business. So nothing really is like newly discovered. Everything that's like a big idea has already been out there. And what people do is they just have a different way to look at it, or they intersect two disciplines together to make their idea or business stand us out more. I think there's a lot of people that say, oh, stay in your lane, stay focused, just do one thing. But if you look at breakthrough companies and innovative ideas, it's really the cross of two different disciplines. Like even Apple is much a tech company, and they sell computers, and but it's design, it's the aesthetics. And just a quick story about Steve Jobs. He, as a kid, when his dad talks about how he walked when he was like walking on the street, he saw like a computer store or something like that. And he wasn't really interested in the computer per se, but was more just the design of it. And he leans into that. That's how he made Apple. And then he took a random class in college at a community school all about fonts and typography and calligraphy. He was really fascinated with that. And the whole Mac system, here's an example. There's Copyblogger. They're really good for online marketers, but they're a combination. They've combined online marketing with writers. So a lot of writers go to their site and are part of their community and purchase their products because they want to know about online marketing. I do brand strategy, but I'm also really into personal growth and leadership. So you can see how there's this combination of two distinct disciplines. So I just want to share two websites that give assessments. This is a great one. I think I shared it in my email. This is a combination of your values and strengths, and this is free. So it's the Institute for Character. Also, there's Strength Finders, which is really based on your natural born strengths, not necessarily your skills. And so we often confuse skills with natural strengths. Skills are very important. What if you have an accidental career and you learn about something and you're good at it, but you're not as good as if it was something that was into your natural born strengths? And you would be able to tell and feel it because it wouldn't be energizing to you. So when you are in your strength zone, you're naturally more energized and you can feel it, and you're 10 times more productive too. So we're going to start now with the external landscape and talk about like how we can really start to understand your audience to better market to them. I talked about this in the first class, that people are really segmented into by their values, beliefs, and attitudes. So not necessarily demographics. So I think there was a lot of, when you talk about market research, people often said, oh, do demographics, but it's really about psychographics. If you communicate your values in your marketing, you will naturally attract people that share the same values as you. And that is the great part about having a great brand, especially as an entrepreneur, a personal brand where you share that, is that sometimes you don't really need to do a lot of outreach and marketing. So there's the push marketing where you're promoting. What most people don't know, like an in-demand brand is somebody that attracts that in, that is pulling that person in. So it's push versus pull. So the funny thing about the consumer is that most of the time they actually don't really know what they need. So you have to ask them questions and really guide them through the process. And we often don't know what we need until we feel a little bit of pain or struggle, and then it's like, wow, I need this right now, and I needed this yesterday. And then they start shopping for all the different options. So the key is here that the most people make decisions based on the subconscious. Our behavior is driven by the subconscious. And that's an important thing to remember, especially when you do your research for the customer, to really understand the underlying motivation behind their behavior. And a great way to do that is to have conversations. And I call this kind of the voice of the customer. What words do they use? Asking the why. When you say, okay, what do you need? Then they'll just say something they kind of needed yesterday, but then why do you need that? Which need is more important, this one or that one? And then really thinking about the situation or the circumstance where that happens. And that's really an important thing to remember in your marketing too, because so that they can reflect on, oh yeah, when I come home from dinner and I don't know, what to cook, and I don't know what to make out of my refrigerator. Say you're selling an app for cooking or something like that. Creating that little micro story will trigger that event for that customer. And then you can position your product in it. So these are just some ideas and prompts to just really get you thinking about all the ideas, all the ways that you can communicate your value to your customer. So the first part of looking externally is, what segment do you want to be in? What segment do you want to play in? And that's really important. But I don't think it's as difficult and confusing as most people think. Most people are like, okay, who's my target or ideal customer? Which one? Who is it? But it's actually somebody that's very similar to you, especially if you have shared values. If you're in the service industry or you're a coach, a lot of times it's just an old past version of you. You had this experience, or you saw something that somebody needed and you created it, or maybe you struggled with it and couldn't find something, and then you went into this business. So thinking, really reflecting back, a past version of you could be the description of your ideal or your target consumer. And then once we hone in on that segment of the population, it's important to understand what they're struggling with and what you do that's going to move them towards a solution that they want and need. And so there's actually a few books on this concept of jobs to be done, but I think of it more as just, what are their needs, right? What are they struggling with, and what are their needs? And so what we want to start organizing it is in the functional, like functionally, what does it do, right? And then the emotion behind it, and then the aspirational. And say, I gave this example in my webinar, say I help people organize, or that, like, functional, that's organizing, but emotionally and aspirational, it's okay, if I organize myself better, maybe I can reach my dreams. So these are the different elements of value, they call it, but it's really about the benefits. So the benefits are 3 different levels: functional, emotional, and aspirational. And the first baseline is the functional. You need to meet the basic needs, the functional needs of your customer, and meet them well. And then you can start talking about the emotional and aspirational. Say because if you talk about the emotional, aspirational things, but functionally, you don't get to that point, then you have a value gap there, right? Like, you have to work on your service offering. So this baseline is knowing your segment of the audience and what they need, and being able to do that really well. So these are some of the elements of value, which is called benefits. This is the elements of value. They use this in, it's probably strategy or marketing jargon. These are just really benefits, and they're categorized in 3 different areas. This was actually created or validated with research by Bain Consulting Group, which is probably one of the world's best consulting firms. And so they came up with this list. And this list is for the business to consumer market. If your business is marketing to the consumer, this is the list. It's going to be slightly different between a business to business and a business to consumer. And so I really wanted to give you guys a very deep, comprehensive look. So I'm including both of these in this presentation for you. This is how they are categorized in terms of aspirational, emotional, and functional. You can begin to start figuring out which ones that you fulfill in the functional, emotional, and aspirational. And this is for the business to business. So business to business is a little bit more complicated. There's the functional value is segmented into two areas, and then there's the emotional, and then there's the aspirational. And here's your diagram or visual of that. As I was talking about before, you really want to meet these minimum requirements. I call them like your minimum job requirements. And then anything above that is this blue sky, right? And how you differentiate yourself. If you want to start even thinking, how do I stand out? They think they have to come up with fancy visuals or marketing stuff, but it's actually an internal strategic thing where you're providing more value. And that's why I feel that the definition of branding for me is about your values, shared values, and the value that you provide people. So this is a quick example of my competitive landscape chart. I want to see where I fall. I have an empty chart in the next slide where you can start writing down your own. A lot of people are drawn to like trends or big market segments, right? And they try to compete in that field. But the thing is, if everybody's there, then it's more competitive, right? And if you fall somewhere else, then maybe the segment of the population is not the masses, which is very competitive, but it's more niche, and it's easier because you have less competition. And that's like where you want to start thinking, like, where is there less competition that really is a good shift for my business that matches my values and strengths. So here's your graph of yours that you can start thinking about and start mapping your competitors. And here's another worksheet for you where you can start ranking them, scoring them from 1 to 10. And then from that, you can put it into that graph. So these are all just different visuals and worksheets to start thinking about and putting down on paper everything that you in your day to day. So that's why I recommend people to just get a little notebook or something, carry it with you all the time. And as you go about your day or interact with your customer, stopping and asking them a question like, what's most important to you? What drew you to me? And especially your best customer, one that you really connect with, and they'll give you insight on what you need to emphasize in your marketing. In the chat after, we'll talk about it and any questions that you have. And the other element that's very important is also taking a deep inventory of not just your strengths and capabilities, but just resources you have. Like you might have an amazing network or alumni. What are some things that you can tap into that you're not? It's for marketing, it's mostly word of mouth, referral is 80%. Are you tapping into your network? Maybe you have a lot of resources, right? That would be great. Are you using it effectively? This is a worksheet that is outside of you, different resources that you can tap into. Where is your greatest advantage? So there's a synthesis that is happening right now where you're evaluating all these things and thinking about the advantage between your competitive landscape. Where do you want to shift? And even if you don't have that alignment right now, you can start moving towards it. So this is a slide that I showed in our webinar, and this encapsulates everything. So this one slide is connecting it's you, and then it's your customer. And it's this back and forth between reflection and research. And it's never really a done thing. It's always evolving as you're learning more, and they're and you're learning more about them, you're learning more about yourself. And I think of it as it's just like dance. And so it's something that's not ever really fixed. It's always evolving and improving. And that's how you want to view your business. And 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 we're going to get into just how you can just create strategies around this that are really more experiments where where you launch something based on logic, and then you evaluate it and you learn and you refine. So alignment. So this gives you insight into where you want to shift to meet your customer needs. So even if you are not there right now, it gives you a trajectory of where you want to be, where you want to start developing some skills. How can you start moving towards that end goal of where you want to be? This is the first element for my brand framework, and it's about brand positioning. So brand positioning is what their positioning is of you in their mind. If you're very clear and consistent about what your value is, and you're consistent with the same words and tone of voice and all the elements that we're going to be talking about in the second, third, and fourth class, then you have like brain space, right? When you think of Nike, you automatically put them in your mind versus another brand, maybe Adidas. So what is your positioning? Everything in your marketing and everything in your business needs to support this positioning statement. So what is strategy? So strategy is a set of choices based on logic and research that will compel the things you can't control to work the way you want it to. So this quote actually came from Roger Martin, who I shared in my little videos, and he is got named the #1 strategist in the world. He's a consultant for all the big companies. He's lecturer at Harvard, and he's written a bunch of books. So basically, strategy is taking a chance, and then what you can't control is how the consumer is going to respond. Nobody can ever control that. At this point, we take our best assumption, or we take our best guess, really based on logic, and we try things and see what works. Strategy do's and don'ts. So a don't, especially for the entrepreneur, is chasing multiple things. You have limited resources, you want to focus on one thing. Second is the economics aren't sustainable. Maybe you have a big dream to do something, but you just don't have the resources or the capital, or what you want to do is just too expensive right now. So that wouldn't work right now to do. Maybe that could be a goal in the future that you can ramp up to. 3, doing the same as everybody else. That's not going to really work for the entrepreneur. It's very competitive, and it's just not something that they're not you, and you're not them. So what worked for them isn't going to work for you, most likely. And fourth is doing a little bit of everything, like throwing spaghetti on the wall. That's not going to work. Do's is doing more than one strategy. So I recommend for the entrepreneur doing these kind of experiments, like maybe they're 3-month experiments, and you can do 1 a quarter. 2 is a winning aspiration, just really having a positive mindset, because it's based on really amazing fundamentals that we talked about in your business. It's based on your values, what you believe in, and your strengths. clear decision on where you want to play. We can't be all things to all people. So you want to find the segment of your audience that you want to connect with, and knowing how I will be better and improve. So you need to know where I'm better than my competitor, right? Like, where do I want to have that advantage? And then the capabilities required to win. So if you know where you want to be better and your advantage, you want to start building capabilities in it, whether it's you investing in yourself, which is always the best investment, and then your team and the systems that will support it. In summary, it's really about these two slides here. So it's really just about looking deeper, uncovering the 95% that's underneath the surface, and really in your mind. And in the next class, I'm going to be talking about this, the root causes and the different problems and solutions that most consumers, especially if you're in the service, just aren't really aware that they even have this problem or solution. So you can be that person that makes them aware, and then position yourself as the best solution, then you've won right there. So when you do this, you can feel like this. You can really feel like you stand out. And that is so much of this process, as you can see, is very much internal. It's really digging deep internally, finding a good match externally. We've covered the first element of your brand positioning. And as you can see, there's many elements of it, and how that's why brands are so powerful. And it all comes together to this experience. And that's how you create a feeling or emotion that people want to be a part of. And branding is much about perception. So you have to be really clear and consistent about it. The challenge is that it's really hard to see those things because we're so close to our business. You need to have that outside perspective. Here are some case studies and testimonials. I've worked with people where I've seen what they've been struggling with, and some of them struggle for years. And just being able to get that outside perspective, they are able to shift right away. So some of the reasons are they're communicating, like Kaida, she was communicating something to her audience that they didn't even really care about. She just thought that they cared about that just because that's what other people were doing, but her audience was very different, and it was just very much similar to her story. Or other people that are just so passionate about their marketing and doing what they do, but then they forget about the why or the benefits. They don't even communicate that. Or there's Justine, she just really wanted to reconnect to something that had launched her business. Her business grew a lot, and she wanted to get back to her roots and come full circle. So everything, we were able to connect the dots to hone it back to her original passion, her gifts, and make everything work together. These are just some things, and everybody has a different fix that they need. Everybody's different. There's not one fix. And that's where just talking to somebody and getting clarity and having somebody see your situation is so important. These are all the elements of a brand and things that could need to get fixed. Everybody's different. So these are some of the areas that we can work on. This is the end of the presentation, and I want to know your questions and reflections and discoveries about this first class is most important.
Thank you. I just want to let everybody know, I worked with Eva 10 years ago, and then I am pivoting again with a new business and stuff. And I've been looking for different brand strategists, and Eva was the only person that I thought of. And I realized that she was part of SCORE. And I just want to say, I am looking forward to your next sessions, because in 1 hour, you actually helped me figure out all the 20 things that I was able to do in 4 bullet points. And I don't know about you, but I have multiple degrees and more than 20 certifications. I was all over the place. And it was just amazing how you were able to streamline and unify that in a short amount of time and such a low cost as well. So I just want to thank you, and I look forward to the next sessions.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. for saying that. Does anybody else have any? Let's see how much time we have. Okay, we have 5 minutes left.
Yeah, someone asked if you have a guide on combining archetypes, or maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yes. In my schedule, you'll see that we're going to be talking about that in the 3rd class. And I've been thinking about that a lot. It's going to be super fun, that class. So please all attend, because we can make it more workshopy if there's just a few of us. But I also have one archetype that is more internal for me, that is not so much outward facing. It's more of an internal guidepost for myself. If that's helpful for you, then great. If not, we'll come to Thursday session, or next 3 sessions, 3 weeks from now. All right. Well, thank you guys all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Jessica, for being here and moderating. This is the first time I've done something without having, like, doing the techie stuff. Thank you for being patient with me and the techie things, and we'll just make it a lot smoother next time. All right. But I hope you guys all enjoyed it. This was, the first 2 sessions are going to be a little bit more heady, and then the 3rd and 4th ones are going to be a lot more fun and conversational. So this definitely is the hard strategy part, but you knowing this stuff, 99% of people don't know. So don't feel overwhelmed at all. All right, guys, thank you very much. And I'll just leave it to Jessica to just exit out of the presentation. But I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next week.